This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Sapan Ghai, the CEO of Sovereign Metals. Thank you very much for joining us today, Sapan. How are you?
Good, Mark. Glad to be here and have the chance to talk about Sovereign.
Indeed. Well, let's talk about Sovereign. I know I met you at the Momentous event probably, nearly a couple of years ago now. And I know you've had a few different roles, but of course, Sovereign's been the focus for a little bit of time now. But let's just take me through some of the high-level overview, if you like, of the company. And of course, the main project there, the Cassia Graphite Rutile project.
Sure. So, bit of background, I think, is always worthwhile.
Sure.
Sovereign's been in Malawi for the best part of 13, 14 years now. Mm-hmm. And initially, the premise of the company was to look for graphite deposits in Malawi, or good graphite projects in Malawi, which we did. And by 2018, we had proved up and done a PFS on a project called the Malingundi Graphite Project, which is a nice, decent-sized graphite project just south of Cassia. Mm. And while we were doing some of the bulk test work there, our guys kept finding titanium within the tailings. So we're mining out some of the material, we're putting it through our labs, we're producing graphite, and in the leftovers, we're checking what's in there, and we kept finding titanium or titanium oxide as it occurs naturally. So we asked the question, what form does this titanium oxide take? We don't mine titanium as a metal. It doesn't really occur as a metal in the ground. It occurs in its oxide forms, and it occurs in two different ways, either an ilmenite or rutile. Ilmenite's about 40 to 60%. Titanium dioxide sells for about $300 a ton, requires upgrading. Rutile requires no upgrading. It's about 95% titanium dioxide plus, and sells for close to $2,000 a ton. So very different commodities. So if we were to find ilmenite, we'd say, okay, that's a decent byproduct. Maybe we could do something there. Turns out it was rutile. So then the question was, well, if we've got this jackpot commodity, is it saleable? Because one of the key things with industrial minerals and with titanium oxides is you need to understand what are the characteristics and the makeup of the rest of the mineral. Too much iron, too much alumina, too much chromium, too much silica, and the whole thing kind of collapses and is unmarketable, uncommercial. So we did some test work on the rutile that we had found. Turns out it's absolutely commercially viable. Okay. So then we asked the question, well, how much of it do we have? And that's what we spent the best part of 2019, 2020, and a part of 2021 figuring out. And look, fast forward to today, and I can sit here and say we have the largest rutile deposit ever found globally. It's the first rutile-dominant deposit found in the last 70 years. Which is probably why many people don't know or haven't heard of rutile. There's only one other rutile producer out there, and that's Sierra Rutile, which produces in Sierra Leone and is coming to an end in about 3 years from their operation there. So look, we're sat there with this huge deposit. We worked out some preliminary economics through a scoping study, and then we proved those up in a PFS. The PFS now tells us we'd be market leader in rutile. Now, the real crux is we've got the rutile, but we've got this byproduct. Now, calling it a byproduct isn't probably correct because we actually have graphite in the deposit. Sure. And it's not only the largest rutile deposit, it's the second largest flake graphite resource in the world as well. So come PFS, we'd be the largest producer, the lowest cost producer in both those minerals.
Okay. And just on rutile and titanium, you say it's the largest rutile deposit ever found. There's only one other rutile producer. What's the market like for titanium, effectively? Where does the main source come from, and what's the forward-looking demand?
So most of the titanium feedstock we use, most oxide, is that ilmenite. And rutile
Right.
we find as a byproduct of ilmenite mines apart from that. Apart from Sierra Rutile, which is a primary rutile producer. So
Right.
we hardly find rutile by itself, which is what we ended up discovering. The markets for titanium feedstock, high grade titanium feedstock, is about 8.5 million tons a year.
Okay.
Currently, rutile makes about 500,000 tons of that, and the rest has to be derived from ilmenite. That ilmenite has to go through a process of smelting or roasting in order to make it commercially useful to the end user.
Okay.
Rutile, on the other hand, once it's produced, is ready to use.
Right. Okay. So it's it's a lot more cost efficient to derive titanium from rutile than is ilmenite.
And that's reflected within the prices of both. You know, you've got $300 a ton ilmenite and almost $2,000 a ton rutile.
Rutile, yes, indeed. Okay. And of course, you did the PFS recently, didn't you? Which does put some significant numbers on this. I guess a lot of work has gone into this PFS, but I mean, some of the highlights, maybe you can take me through them, but I mean, the big one is the NPV of 1.6 billion US dollars for a company at the moment that's at what you had, 126 roughly?
Yep, in terms of market cap, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Yes, you're right. I mean, one of the other ways to look at it is our EBITDA thrown off from this project, according to the PFS, would be well over $400 million. So we're trading at about a quarter, so about 3 or 4 months worth of EBITDA, or future EBITDA, I should say. Now, of course, we're not going to be worth what the NPV is. That's what we'd be worth on the day we switch on everything and everything's already built and financed.
Sure.
But trading at 7 to 8% of that today, is it the correct haircut? I guess that's for the market to decide.
Indeed, it's for the market to decide. But of course, you've got an investment there, haven't you? Rio Tinto. Is it 15% of the company that Rio owns? So they are not going to jump in on that unless they, feel it's a pretty significant opportunity.
Correct. So Rio Tinto back in July acquired 15% of the company, and they parted with $40 million to do so. Those $40 million essentially fund or will advance the DFS, with the DFS kicking off in 2024.
Okay.
They also have the right to increase their stake to 19.99%. And that would bring in another $16 million from Rio.
Okay.
Now, the reason they can't go over the 20% threshold is we're an ASX as well as AIM-listed company, and our ASX regulations mean over 20%, you have to put a mandatory bid.
Right. Okay. So they're going to go to they've got the option to go to the maximum they can get without effectively making a takeover bid.
Correct.
Right. Okay. That's possible, though, I suppose, isn't it?
We will always do what's best for our shareholders at any point in time.
Indeed.
But having said that, look, the Rio deal itself, they're not just a plain vanilla shareholder now.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
But there were some bells and whistles, some in favor of us, and some, of course, in favor of them.
Sure.
I guess in favor of them is that they have a right of first refusal on any M&A done at the project level, and they have the right to market 40% of the product if they become operator of the mine. Now, their option to become operator of the mine lapses 180 days post us announcing a DFS. So they only have a window, that's their window of opportunity.
Okay.
The positives for us, apart from the obvious, is, we are now plugged into the experience, the expertise, the value chains, the knowledge that a Rio Tinto has in the titanium space, where they're one of the biggest producers of titanium feedstock in the world.
Right.
Their customer base is going to be the most blue chip customer base. And on the graphite side, they'll be helping us qualify our graphite for lithium ion batteries. and they already have MOUs with the likes of Ford, with BMW, and with Volvo. So really, it's accelerated our importance within those two.
Indeed.
Those two industries.
And how much involvement have Rio got in the next steps that the company's taking with the DFS? Are they heavily involved, helping you out with this?
So we've convened what we've called the technical committee. So that's 3 members of Sovereign's team and 3 members of Rio Tinto's team. But really, as I said, what that is understanding, it's us plugging into Rio's expertise in building out, configuring, understanding potentials of large-scale, world-class Tier 1 projects. This is whoever controls Cassia, produces from Cassia, will be the primary player within the titanium feedstock market when it comes to high-grade, pure, low CO2 emissions titanium feedstock. And simply because we would be the largest graphite concentrate producer, or Cassia would, it also means that essentially whoever is producing from Cassia would have a major role to play in the lithium-ion batteries business.
Sure. Okay. And if we just think about perhaps some risk elements, I mean, it sounds like a lot of it has been de-risked looking at the PFS there. You're going down DFS, which would de-risk the project even further. The Rio percentage that again de-risks the project. But what risks might be a factor here that perhaps is meaning that, you're perhaps, let's say, undervalued a little bit? Could it be jurisdictional risk there? Malawi, not really known for its mining projects, is it?
Yeah, so mining's still in its infancy in Malawi. Its neighbors have a little bit of a head start, I guess, Zambia, Mozambique. Yet what's shown us that the Malawian government is absolutely on board with us advancing Cassia. Firstly, mining is one of 3 pillars within the strategy for the development of Malawi. You've got mining, agriculture, and tourism. The president got up in front of the UN General Assembly a few years ago and actually talked about Cassia and how its development means that Malawi's rise in mining is imminent. So that gives if that doesn't give us enough credence, I don't know what does. But look, when we announced the PFS results and had Rio come on board, the Malawian government, had a fully open door policy. How can we help you guys move this forwards and move it forwards pretty fast?
Okay.
And one of the points that we raised with them was it would be great if we had a one-stop shop to deal with when it came to different ministries, etc. And they are completely obliged, and they set up an interministerial committee within the realms of government. So that's representatives of the different ministries all sat around one table, all with a view to move Cassia forwards. So again, that gives us a lot of comfort in terms of where Malawi's thinking on this project.
Indeed. Excellent. Okay. Well, I would recommend, if anyone's interested, to go and have a read of the report that Charles Archer wrote. His investing strategy on his website there. It's very detailed. We'll put a link to that in the link when we put this video out. Just a final thought from you, Sapan, going forward. I mean, as I say, looks pretty much significantly de-risked. There's a lot of highlights from that PFS life of mine. 25 years, that's a long time at the PFS level as well. To get that is pretty good. You said about the over 400 million EBITDA there with a capex. What was it? Just over, or sort of nearly just under 600. Was it 600 million? Something like that. Yeah, so I mean, there's some good numbers there already.
I think one of the keys to understand that 25 years and that $600 million and that EBITDA figure is, where that PFS was a 100% sovereign metals PFS. It had no input from Rio Tinto. That was us as an ASX AIM listed junior understanding what could we finance? Or, what CapEx number could we finance in order to build something out with this project? And we thought, around $600 million, with my background in finance and in investment banking, we were quite comfortable with that number. And that gave us that 25-year mine life. That gave us, how much can we produce over that time period? But what's interesting is, at the end of those 25 years, even being the largest producer of rutile and the largest producer of graphite, albeit at the lowest cost, you would still have 70% of the mineralization still in the ground.
Okay. Yeah. Pretty significant. And it's interesting you say that you wouldn't be worried about financing that 600 million. I mean, it obviously depends how the deal is structured, how things work in the future. But given now that Rio are involved, there's plenty of options on the table, are there?
There are. We have within our investment agreement with Rio, we actually state, that do we get to a point where we look at mine construction funding, that Rio would assist us in procuring that.
Okay. I'm just thinking on timelines. DFS, has the work started? How long will it take, do you think?
I think before we get to a DFS, we really need to understand what's the real true potential of this project. And that's why we brought, Rio Tinto on board. We can now understand exactly what we can do with this monster called Cassia, and how we can really build it out, not just as a junior company trying its best, but actually, what's the blue chip view of Cassia?
And how will you articulate that to market then? What can we expect to see from the company?
So we're in this optimization phase where we're looking back at the PFS and saying, what can we configure differently? What can we change a little bit here or there? Is there a different type of sequencing around where we mine and how we mine this stuff?
Okay.
And we'll be feeding all of our findings into the market as we go along with that.
So perhaps an updated PFS with the input there from Rio Tinto?
Yes, potentially an updated PFS, but definitely something that would essentially work, let us understand what the scope of a DFS would look like.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Sapan Gai, the CCO of Sovereign Metals, and look forward to following that story in 2024.
Great. It's been a pleasure, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.